What's up everyone? First off, welcome to the channel. My name is Garrett Campbell if you don't know me yet. And in today's video, if you couldn't tell by now, this is gonna be the best sales training you've ever seen on YouTube. You may be asking yourself, like, what qualifies this guy? Well, over the past 5 years, I've done $8 million in sales. I'm not here to pat myself on the back, just like, trust me, this works. So without further ado, let's get into the video. As I mentioned earlier, there's a lot of beliefs that I honestly think are like prerequisites that you need to know before you actually just get into how to close deal and you get super tactical. And I don't want to give you this woo like bullshit when it comes to beliefs, but I think too many sales reps in all their sales jobs get handed a sales script and they're like, go close deals. And then they slip over all of this stuff. And then they have the wrong mental framework for how to go through sales. So they just say the words on the script or they just sound super needy. And I'm here to change that now. The first one is that the problem being solved is the goal, not the sale. And you really need to internalize being detached from the outcome. I call it commission breath. They can sense when you're just saying anything or doing anything to close the deal to get the money. And like in sales, you're already naturally at a level of distrust with the prospect because they know you are financially incentivized to get them to buy the service. So you have to like overcompensate by that by showing true, pure intentions of wanting to solve the problem. Obviously knowing that your service or whatever thing it is that you sell can solve the problem, but just in knowing that like you're not attached to the fact that they have to buy your service to solve the problem. So like being open to other possible solutions until you learn more and find out that this is exactly right for them. I think as a whole, buyers are more intelligent than salespeople lead them to be. So just by genuinely showing up pure and just like, I'm here to solve the problem, don't buy the product, I don't care. I want you to be in a better place and I want things to be solved once we leave this call, independent of whether it's with my company, you give us money or you don't give us money. Cool. Okay. Like that needs to be established grounds. The second thing, which kind of goes into that first point, is the person who needs the sale the least gets it. This is huge for really any deal you close ever. Imagine this in the context of relationships. You have a guy, you have a girl. The guy is really wanting it to happen and the girl's like, either way is cool. You know, he's texting her, oh my God, you're so beautiful. We have to hang out sometime. She's like, yeah, sure, we'll do it sometime. And then she just keeps going at it, DMing her, texting her, hey, we should really do this. They see each other in public. He freaks out. And she's just kind of impartial to the fact, like, there's no way like he's getting what he wants in that scenario because the other party has all the leverage because they're showing less interest. So the person who wants it the most is not going to get what they want. So in sales, it's really no different. If the prospect really wants it and the salesperson's like, do you think this will be able to work? And they're like, yes, like please, like I want it. And like, if you show a level of like, I don't want to say disinterest, but I think sales is this game of like push and pull. And if the prospects are pushing at you, you need to almost pull away a little bit. And if they're pulling away from you, you have to pull back too, because this isn't a game of chasing. So if they pull back and you chase after them, deal's gone, because it's obvious that you want them more than they want you. So if they pull back, you have to pull back. And then it's like, who's doing the pushing? You know what I mean? And that's where they usually go back to start chasing you. And that's kind of the game that we play here. The third thing here is it's not you versus the prospect, it's us versus the goal. I hope this makes sense here. Like we're on the same team. Like I'm selling from my back foot. I'm just here to help you. I'm on your side. I just want to get this solved just as much as you do. Like I'm on your team, dude. Like we're not fighting each other here. I think where a lot of people go wrong is they think the sales call is like an arm wrestling match and I'm going to get it out of them. Like I'm going to get the deal closed. And that's where a lot of people go wrong, because even if you do close the deal, buyer's remorse kicks in and they feel defeated in the conversation. So then they're like, fine, I'll do it. And they pay. And then 24 hours, 48 hours later, they're like, why did I do that? That sales guy just pressured me. He put me in a corner and it made me feel like I had to do it. So I did. And now I'm out of money and I don't actually want to do this in the first place. So then they refund or they charge back, or they, at least ask for a refund. And then you usually have a bad client relationship after the fact. So when it's us versus the problem, like we're on the same side, and then they're more open with you, they're more honest with you, and it just generally makes the call a whole lot more easier. The last thing here, which I could talk about for a whole other video, and I likely will, is sales is a balance of masculine and feminine energy. And if that doesn't click well in your head, basically what I mean is the masculine side is like having authority, like being authoritative in the call. The feminine side is basically just being friendly. So if you're a dude and you're like, I'm not feminine, you know what I mean? Like, dude, calm down. On feminine, friendly, masculine, authoritative. Because if you're too authoritative, like if you're that guy who's just, yelling at people, like that guy's an asshole and no one wants to work with someone that's an asshole. But if you're too friendly and you're too feminine, you're going to get walked all over and prospects will just take control of the conversation and do whatever they want. And you're going to get walked all over. You need to be somewhere in the middle to where you have enough authority to where they respect you and they let you control the call, but you're feminine and friendly enough for them to feel comfortable being open with you and honest with you about problems they're having or struggles they're facing. Because again, if you're too masculine, they feel like they can't open up to you. So you need to have both. And ironically enough, the more friendly you are, the more capacity you create to be more authoritative and like ask for more authority and be a little bit more bold on the call. And the more bold you are on the call, it allows you to be more friendly, to be more bold, and they kind of just feed back into each other, and it's really fun. And the goal and the challenge is to be perfectly in the middle. So it takes a level of being self-aware to know, okay, am I more of a friendly guy who just likes to go with the flow and hates confrontation? Because to be frank, that's me. And that's something I had to adjust for when I got into sales, was I had to work to be more authoritative and more masculine on calls. I almost had to like try to be an asshole or try to be overly authoritative. And then I realized prospects had no issue with it. And I'm like, oh, this is just all in my head. And then I tried to step over that line. And then I kind of found my middle ground. Or if you're the other side of the equation, which isn't me and in general is not most people, you're overly authoritative and overly masculine, and you're almost come off as rude to some people and rub people wrong. Try to be overly emotional and go overboard with having super deep conversations with prospects and building rapport and chatting it up. And then you realize you're likely somewhere in the middle too. So I've noticed if you're one way, try to overcompensate on whichever side it is, and you'll likely meet yourself somewhere in the middle and find that common ground. And you'll notice it'll be so much easier to close deals. Now that we've got the beliefs part out of the way and covered, I feel like you guys are well equipped with the beliefs that you need to go close some deals. I want to get into the more tactical stuff, which is how the sales conversation is actually structured, and most importantly, why it's structured this way. I've trained over 170 sales reps, and one thing that I'll tell you is if they don't understand why something is the way it is or why it's in a script, you're not gonna know why you should emphasize it or what answer to look for when you ask a certain question. I think when you notice the way that I structure my sales conversations, it's kind of backwards, in the sense of what objections you're gonna get. So you reverse engineer the questions in the script and everything to handle every objection before it comes. So when you're at the very end and you're about to drop price, the only possible objection they could give you is a price objection because they don't know it until the very end, right? So you obviously know they're gonna say, hey, I need to speak with my wife, or I need to speak to some more competitors. You know the drill. Like, you've heard the objections before, you kind of know what to expect. So the goal of how we structure the sales conversation is to front load and solve and handle all of those objections before they even come. Because before the price is dropped, these are minuscule, tiny problems. Once price is dropped, and then this is the quote unquote objection, it becomes a way bigger deal because you like, your pants are down, like everything's out. They know what you're rocking with. Like, they know the price, they know the details of what you're selling, they know everything. So if they still have a problem, that's a big deal. So you always have to solve everything you physically can before they know the price, because it alleviates these small problems becoming larger. So you always have to front load and solve for them. And you can do this by asking what I call objection-seeking questions. So let's get into how I actually navigate the flow of the script. So let me kind of like rattle these off here. So we have the intro, we set the agenda, we go through the future situation, we recap, we give a relevant testimonial, and then we actually just go for the close. And how we go through the call. And one thing that you'll notice is in the intro, we're more feminine, we're more friendly. When we set the agenda, we're masculine, more authoritative. And then current situation is more friendly and more feminine. And then we just sway back and forth with every single of these 7 stages of the sales call. And I think this will click as I go about explaining it. So the intro, obviously when you get on the call, you gotta just be like, hey Garrett, where are you from, right? Don't spend too much time here. If you're selling a B2C service, so a business to customer service or consumer, whatever service, you could spend a little bit more time chit chatting and kind of building rapport here. If it's a more of an emotional based sale when you're selling things like, fitness or, anything mental health related, something along those lines. It's gonna be a lot of an emotional sale. So work to build more rapport and kind of chit chat a little bit more here. If it's B2B, as in selling business to business, like I doubt when Microsoft and Apple have a big deal that they're closing that they're asking them about the weather that day. Like they're not fucking doing that. Like just get into the call. You know what I mean? So if it's a B2B service, spend less time doing this. If it's a B2C service, spend a little bit more time doing this. And if you guys are confused on what exactly it is that you sell or the scenario, comment below and I'd be happy to answer this. I answer all my YouTube comments. So in the intro, my go-to, regardless of whatever thing it is that I'm selling, is obviously their name. I'm like, oh, what's up, Garrett? Where are you from, man? Because the easiest way to hack rapport is by having a shared experience. It takes you from being some stranger on the internet that they're not sure if they should trust or not to like, oh wow, like we have a similar experience. I travel a little bit, so it makes it easy for me. So if they say they're from Atlanta, I'm like, oh my God, dude, there's like a wing place on every corner. Like, do these things just spawn everywhere? You get a little bit of humor early and they'll kind of chuckle and you can gauge their personality. So I have like a go-to like one-liner for almost every major city. And if it's like, oh, like I'm from Pittsburgh, but dude, no way, I'm a Steelers fan. So like we could kind of build rapport off of location, which is usually really helpful. And then immediately after that, I can kind of gauge their personality type, right? Because if they're super talkative, they'll rattle off everything about their city and where they're from and how they used to live one place and now they live in another place. So like, you don't have to get into, you can be like, okay, this guy's a little bit more of a talker, and that changes the way the conversation goes. If they're like Boston and they just like don't expand on it at all, don't chit chat anymore. Just move more into the call and you'll notice they're a little bit more of like a type of person who doesn't want to chit chat. They just want to get into shit. So like gauge this first question that's a little bit more relaxed on how well they respond, if they're talkative or not talkative. And you can kind of gauge their personality off of that. And then the first thing that I ask after that is I get into something from the form or the information that they filled out prior. Usually they'll say something about their business. I was checking out your website, or, I saw you are struggling with this, and this, like, what's going on there? What do you do for work? Tell me more about your business, whatever. And you can kind of get into that to where it's still small talk, but it's relevant to the conversation and you're moving forward in the convo. You're getting a little bit of information. And that's really the intro. Don't put too much emphasis in here. Spend 2-3 minutes, maybe max, talking about this and then just get into the conversation. Honestly, I think one of the most overlooked parts of the sales call is what I call setting the agenda. This is where you're a little bit more masculine. You kind of put your foot down and you're like, this is how the call works. So when I say setting the agenda, it is what it sounds like. You're setting the agenda. You're like, this is what's going to be talked about in the call. And this is where we pull an element of like scarcity and urgency into the conversation. And this is really where you try to like nearly push away prospects. So say something along the lines of this. It changes a little bit based on whatever you're selling. Let's say you're selling like a marketing agency service for Facebook ads. Like you run Facebook ads for restaurants, right? And you're like, gotcha, Mr. Prospect. Thanks again for hopping on. Just so you understand how this call works. Largely what we do is rerun Facebook ads for restaurants. And we've done this for over 1,000 restaurants over the past 3 years. We've been in business doing this. We've got phenomenal client results. So much so that we've realized the types of businesses we do get results for and who we do not get results for. So we can kind of identify what characteristics and things need to be there in the business for us to get you results. So transparently, we turn down like over half of the people we speak to because we know we won't get them results.
What's going on? How y'all doing today?
Too happy. Get them out of here.
So throughout this call, I'm gonna be asking you a ton of questions about your business to see if you check every box. And only if I have the utmost conviction that we can get you results, will I break down kind of what it looks like working together. Is that cool with you? So a couple things to unpack here. And if you couldn't tell, I've done this a couple times. It's basically just that like, A, we're experts. We've done this a lot. We know if we can get you results or cannot get you results. So like, if not, you're literally not gonna get an offer. Next thing is we've turned down majority of people that we talk to, like over half. So what are they doing? They're sitting up in their seat a little bit. They're like, oh shit, okay. I need to like prove to them that my business is worthy of like being able to basically give them money and like use the service, right? So they're like trying to sell themselves now that they're a good enough business to work with your business, which is a really cool dynamic, because when you can shift the frame from not, hey, I'm trying to sell you on why you should buy my services, to where it's flipped and they're like, I'm selling you on why I qualify and why I'm good enough to buy your service. That makes shit a lot easier. Rolex actually does this pretty well. They're not exactly chasing you down to buy a Rolex, right? It's a status thing. It's like, why do you deserve a Rolex? And you really have to prove to them that you're worthy enough of buying a Rolex. So similar dynamics, sell like Rolex. That's it for setting the agenda, to show them that you don't give everyone an offer. And most importantly, you're an expert and you're only giving them an offer if you have the utmost conviction that you can get them results for sure, which is important because when an expert tells them, yes, we can help you, yes, we can get you results for sure, and then they hear what that is, they get excited, right? It's like if you have a life-threatening condition and a doctor's like, I've done so many of these surgeries, I know for a fact this is a really easy fix, we'll do it. You know, you're not like doubting if the surgery is a good idea or not. They're like, this guy's an expert, he says to do it, let's do it. For the actual current situation side of this, which is the next thing, notice we went from more authoritative, more masculine. Now we're getting more friendly. Now we're getting a little bit more on the feminine side. This is where we want them to just open up and tell us everything. In a perfect world, we are like a therapist and they're sitting on the couch crying, telling you all of their problems. Like that is the most ideal scenario. Not everyone opens up that well. So it's best to just show a ton of empathy here. It's like you need to show as much empathy as possible so that when they start explaining a problem, they want to tell you more, right? So again, let's just stay on the topic of saying that we're selling Facebook ads for restaurants. Just kind of ask them more surface level stuff. And that's what scripts really are, right? It's just asking surface level questions. The game in being a good sales rep is asking the questions beneath the questions. And if you can get 2 levels, 3 levels deep, that's where the real game is. And that's where the money's made. When they say, yeah, you know, things have been okay. We bought a restaurant, you know, in a good location and all, but we just kind of been struggling with a little bit of foot traffic. Like the best thing ever to get people to pry and give you more information without feeling like you're prying is saying the past 3 words I said back to you with an upward inflection. So I'd say more foot traffic. It's like, yeah, you know, things have kind of dried up a little bit. I guess that's why we reached out to you in the first place because, you know, funds have been a little tight. It's like funds have been tight. And then they'll be like, yeah, we tried this, nothing's working, right? So that's optimal is for them to just tell you all of their problems, everything that's gone wrong and get a deep understanding of their business. Think of it this way, right? With current situation, and then you'll notice soon, obviously we're about to talk about future situation. The goal, like assume 0 is a flat line, life is good, I'm okay. -10 is like hell. +10 is like heaven, right? Like this is the scale, right? We want their current situation to be as close as hell, as close to -10 as physically possible. And their future situation, their goal is to be as close to a 10, heaven, as physically possible. Because the bigger this gap is, the more urgency that's created to take action. Because if you want someone to drop, you know, $10,000, $20,000, $40,000, $5,000, whatever, in a 45-minute phone call, there has to be urgency to want to take action to do something like now, right? So the only way that urgency is done is by being fed up with what's currently happening. And for the future outcome to be so desirable, they just have to do it. That's the goal here. So in this current situation, we want them to feel really struggled, really tireless with everything they've tried. As nothing is working, they get super, super frustrated. You know all their problems and they're so fed up, right? You want to get as close to that hell situation as possible. And then next, we get into the future situation, which is that 4th piece of this call, right? Where it's the polar opposite. And the best, really way to go about this transition period is like, you know, gotcha, man, you're doing like 20 grand a month right now with your restaurant. You know, ideally, assuming we just knock it out of the park, like what would you be doing like numbers wise? And then, you know, of course they will tell you. It's important to mention, like for all of you guys watching this YouTube video right now, like obviously if you could press a button and magically double the amount of money that you make on a monthly basis, who wouldn't press that button? Like no shit. But what's the motive behind wanting to make more money, right? That's the real question. That's the real sauce. When they say, oh, I would love to make 100K a month, you just say, you know, got you. That, I mean, obviously like who wouldn't want to 5X how much money they're making? But like, what's the motive behind all this? Like, again, what I just said, obviously if anyone could press a button, 5X their income, who wouldn't press that button? But like, there's a lot of work that's going to go into that. There's a lot of blood, sweat, and tears that's going into 5Xing your business. Like there's going to be hardships that come when you're doing that, when you're 5Xing your business. What's the motive behind all this?
Why?
Well, you know, I'd love to get a point to where I can exit my business, or I'd love to spend more time with my wife and kids. And as we make more money, we can hire more people so we can spend more time with my wife and kids. And you're like, okay. Because it's always not about the money, but more times than not, the motive behind wanting to make more money is the reason why anyone buys everything ever anyway. Like, yes, make more money, cool. But maybe that's my neighbor drives me nuts and I need to get to a place where it's a nicer apartment. You know, the restrictions in my state are so annoying. I want to move to Florida, right? Or insert whatever thing that money can buy, right? That's usually the motive behind doing these things. So you want to get them as close to that heaven state as physically possible by asking them these questions. And don't be corny and be like, what would the leather seats feel like when you're in your Lambo? Like, you know, like don't do that shit, but just I think you know what I'm going for here. Once you feel like you've kind of squeezed everything you can out of this orange and they kind of have really nothing else to talk about, as in their goals and their problems and everything's really out there, be like, as far as like, just ask, when you feel like you've kind of squeezed everything out of the orange and you know all their problems, you know all their aspirations and their goals, and you feel like everything's there, Mr. Prospect, now that I feel like I know everything you've gone through, all of your problems really, and like everything you want out of, your business and what you want out of a service like myself, is there anything else that I could potentially need to know about these two things here? Maybe you get the last little bit of juice out of the orange, right? But ideally that answer is no. And it's like, got you. Perfect. And then you get into the recap, which, to be frank, it's not masculine, it's not feminine really. It's more empathetic than anything. So I guess it leans toward the feminine, friendly side of things, right? You kind of just have to run them and recap them through everything that you've heard so far. Because I think when you're so close to the problem, you don't even see the severity of the situation because you're just too close to it. So from the outside looking in, you can kind of give them that perspective. I mean, gotcha, Mr. Prospect. From everything I've heard, you're doing 20 grand a month right now. It's not bad, but to be frank, your margins are awful on that. You have some employees and stuff like that are just really frustrating you. And if you had the money, to be able to replace them, you really have no way of getting foot traffic, predictably. And you feel like, Facebook ads would be the way of scaling your business up to 100 grand a month. And once you got to that point, you could move yourself in your business a little bit more, spend more time with your wife and kids and get to a point to where maybe in 4 or 5 years, you could actually exit this business and sell it for a good chunk of money so you could, enjoy retirement. Does that sound roundabout accurate here? They're gonna be like, oh my God, dude, that's exactly the problem. And this shows really just two things here. A, you're actually listening, and then B, you get them. Like there's alignment. Like we are on the same page here because it's their business or it's their baby or it's their life. It depends, of course, what you're selling, right? You want to make sure there's pure alignment before you sell them anything. Because if you guys aren't on the same page, it doesn't matter what you're selling. They'll be like, this guy doesn't understand. I'm not going to work with him. So here we want to extend the offer, explain why we gave them in the offer in the first place, and then give a relevant testimonial for the reason we're doing so. It would go something along the lines of like this, right? You're just expressing all the doubts that they had. You're like, you didn't run any ads in the past at all. You guys are typically, I'm not gonna lie, you're a little bit smaller than some of the businesses we typically work with. And I was kind of worried, with you not having a strong, team member base that, some of the things could potentially go wrong here. But actually, after I talked to you a little more, I know you're a really intelligent founder. You're a great business owner. I think you're really passionate about what you do. You have a crazy work ethic. And actually, you remind me a ton of our client Armando, who was actually at 20K a month. We scaled him to 100K a month with paid ads. And then now he's doing this, and this, insert all. Of course, don't lie about the testimonial, but if the business is reputable and good that you're selling for, they should have a testimonial that's similar to the person that you're talking to. So if you're like, I had some doubts, but you cleared them up and we got results for someone just like you. That's a very common objection. This thing that you're selling is great, but can you get results for someone just like me, right? That solves for that. And if you haven't noticed by now, at this point in the call, there's really not much else to do besides give them an offer. And we've already, in the current situation, the time, the money objection, the business partner objection was already handled at the beginning. Can this work for someone just like me? Already taken care of. Really, the only thing that they could potentially have objections on are the service itself, the deliverables of the service. And the other thing would just be the actual price. And we're gonna lock down the service part next. So when it comes to actually explaining the service itself, don't get into too many granular details about the service. At the end of the day, the closer the prospect is to thinking about today and exactly what they're getting in 1 day and 2 days and a week and a month, the less of a likelihood you have of actually closing the deal. When they're thinking about 6 months out, a year out, 2 years out, 5 years out, 10 years out, they have a higher likelihood of closing. So anything that you say when you're talking about, explaining your service, just tie it to that goal, which we've mentioned a lot in this video, being 100K a month. But really what we do is, we run Facebook ads, we get you to a point where we get you scaled up and get you to a point where we're at 100 grand a month. That's basically what we do. You don't have to get into the granular details. If you're like, okay, so we're gonna get on an onboarding call, then you have to fill out all these documents, right? Like they're like, I don't want chores. Of course, tell them what they're gonna have to do, right? And what you're gonna do and all that fun stuff. But don't get into a bunch of details. Just sell the outcome, not the deliverables. Don't sell the features, sell the outcome, right? You've maybe heard some things like this, like don't sell the flight, sell the vacation. Like that's the idea. Sell the end destination, end outcome, not every little nitty bitty piece that happens in there. And the biggest thing, usually I break it down to like 3 basic things. So it's let me do this, then we do this. And that's how, again, we tie it to you doing 100K a month. Does that make sense? And then once we get through the pitch, don't think too hard about this. Break it up into 3 things and then just keep tying it to that end outcome. And then once you get through all of that in the pitch, don't say the price yet. There's an intermission, a period of time here between dropping everything in the service and then actually dropping the price, which is huge. And this part is really important. And a lot of people slip up on this. You'll notice that the sales pressure is rising because they can feel like, ooh, there's about to be a price drop. It gets all awkward. It gets a little nervous. You can cut the tension with a knife. You want to like pop that tension, like you're popping a balloon with a pen, right? Just get them to like, especially if you're on a video call, you literally see their shoulders like rise and they're like a little bit more stiff. You want them to see them like drop their shoulders, take a deep breath, breathe a little bit. So like humor is the best way to pop that balloon, right? Give them like a little chuckle, you know what I mean? Stuff like that. Get them to open up a little bit, feel a little bit more relaxed before you drop the price, because you'll feel that sales tension rising. So you're like, Mr. Prospect, now that you've heard everything, would you have any reason to believe that there'd be anything inefficient with our service and it would not work for you? If the answer is anything besides absolutely not, this is awesome, I'm gonna do it, like how much is it? Test them, because they're not gonna be like, yeah, shit sucks. You know what I mean? Like you have to kind of like sense that. It takes emotional intelligence to know if there is a nice like, no, seems great. I'll be like, dude, you didn't even like halfway convince me. Like what's your main concern? So like make sure it's a definite no, I love everything. It makes sense. It checks out. Let's do it. How much is it? Like they kind of ask you for next steps. That's ideal. So if they give a half-ass answer, like test them and just say something similar to like what I just said with a little bit of humor. If not, and they're like, no, it's awesome. Everything checks out. It's like, cool. Then you can just kind of get into the actual price drop. And the way that I always do this is like the price anchor. So I'll be like, gotcha, Mr. Prospect, for everything that we talked about, for us to, and then just very small recap of what they're getting in the service. You know, for us to basically run your whole Facebook ads every single month, do everything to where you're completely hands off. We do everything for you. And ultimately, if you get to a point where you 5x your business, if you're doing another 100K a month in revenue, it's just a one-time investment of 5,000 US, right? That's kind of the way of doing things. Never say price, cost, because these have connotations of lost money. Investment or tuition have a connotation of an ROI. So always say investment. Investment's usually my go-to. If you sell like a coaching program or course or anything like that, then tuition, go for it. Always say the big number. So you notice I did a price anchor there, right? So the price anchor being how much money they will make. Depends on the offer you sell. You could do a ROI-based price anchor, a lost money price anchor, and you're going to lose money if you don't do this. Or another thing that you could do is you could anchor, I'm not going to flip you guys off here, the third finger, which is you could anchor other competitors' prices being way more expensive than yours. So you'd be like, it's crazy. You know, we've had clients that have actually come to us after dropping like $60,000 on different services similar to ours. And then they literally get more results with us. And you know, we're just 4K a month. So they can be like, oh my God, 60K? Because anytime you say a big number and then you drop a little number, that number just seems smaller. That's why if you ever remember those like infomercials when you were young and they're like price slash, just $19.99.
You also get 15 popular designs for quick and easy bedazzling. You get a $50 value for just $19.95.
That's obviously why they do that. So drop a big price anchor and then say smaller number, because then it'll sound cheaper. And then once you say that, just like let that marinate. And that's really it. Let them marinate the price. It's the first time ever hearing it. And then by then, because there's nothing wrong with the actual service itself, they said there's no issues with it. They have no other issues with anything else. You can really only get a price objection here. If you guys do get any price objections whatsoever, you can go ahead and like and subscribe to my channel here. And we have tons of videos on how to navigate handling objections. I'll catch you on the next video.